Youth makeup is another side of age makeup that I don't think we necessarily see quite as often as we see old age makeup in theater, but it is certainly something that you might encounter at some point during your career. So in order to do a youth makeup, I like to think of it as I do a lot of my like basic corrective, so I have foundation everywhere. I color corrected a little bit, and that's all I'm doing right now. I focus a lot on the highlight and just trying to have the face have a lot of color to it and look very like bright and kind of glowy. So not necessarily like I'm gonna be like super highlighted and like too highlighted or anything, but it's more just like focusing on your highlights and less on your contouring. I might do a little bit of contour just to kind of like frame out my face slightly, because if you are going to be on stage, you do need some kind of shading most likely. But the focus really is going to be on a dramatic highlight. So I'm going to do my highlight and my blush in a cream, and then my blush is a gel. And then after that, everything else we're going to work with are powders, just so you can also see how you can utilize powders in your age makeup. So I already have on my foundation, and I did my color correcting under my eyes. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do my highlighting. So I really want to make sure that I brighten my eye area a lot. So I'm going to apply my highlighter. And it's not pure white, it's like a yellowish white. So this is just like the highlighter I would normally use if I was doing just like my regular makeup. And we're only going to focus on this half of my face as well. So I'm going to make sure that I really brighten the eye area. Right here on people is somewhere that I think gets really shadowy, that I don't always think we think about. So I always like to put a little bit of color right here, and then that'll all blend where I need it to be. I'm going to highlight above my eyebrows and kind of like this whole center portion of my forehead. And then, so to figure out where to highlight on your cheeks, you can go from the top of your ear. That's going to help you figure out where your cheekbone is, and I want to go kind of like right on top of that. So right here would kind of be where I need my highlighter to be. And so right now I'm just applying it, and then we're going to go back and blend it. So that's going to give me a strong highlight. I can kind of pop my highlight under here, so that'll give me kind of like a natural shading without me having to really intensely contour. And then just to kind of keep it even, I'm also just going to put a little bit of highlighter here, and then we can highlight a little bit down the front of the nose and above the lip. And then I'm not going to do a cream contour because I don't want it to get too dramatic or too intense, because if you think about younger children, they don't really have like really intense dramatic contour, so we're just kind of trying to like put color on the face, brighten the face, and a lot of times too, children have sort of more like rounded out faces anyway, so we don't necessarily have to work as hard to kind of sculpt the face, because that's not usually how we see children or how we think of children when that's kind of like the character that we have in mind. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of blend this out. I like using brushes to blend, but you could use a beauty blender or a sponge. And so to blend it, you kind of just like I always say like you're making little circles, so you're just kind of like tapping the makeup into your skin, so that way I'm not pulling it back off, and just kind of lightly buffing it in. For the nose, you do kind of have to pull it down just a little bit. You do want to be careful in more fragile areas. And again, this. So this color is pretty close to my skin tone already, so it's not too bad that this whole part is pretty highlighted, but obviously you don't want to do anything that looks too dramatic, but if you start with what your regular highlighter is, I recommend doing that, and then we're going to build with like lighter and brighter things that are in powders. And then one place a lot of other people end up showing age is actually like right here in your nasolabial fold, so I'll end up putting just a little bit of highlighter right there usually too, just to try to like combat this shadow. It's something that's probably a little bit easier to see when you're taking like photos, but that is one more place that we do see a lot of shadows that can show age, so if you just kind of like highlight that, it's gonna make it want to pop out instead of recede in. So that's the whole reason that we're highlighting, is that we want to draw attention to things and pop those out instead of shading, and when we shade things, that recedes them in. So if I put my highlight in places where I would normally put shadows, that's going to help them pop back out. So like on this side, this is going to help my under eyes look lighter and brighter, but over here where I still have this strong shadow, if I put more shadow there, it's just going to recess more. So we're going to go and do that. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of a pure white cream, not a ton. And again, you would want to choose the one that's appropriate for your skin tone. For me, this is the next lightest thing that there is. So I'm only going to put that kind of like in the inner corner of my eye. And then again, we're going to go in and really blend this out. And it gets so blindingly bright because of my wonderful lighting. And so it doesn't have to be anything too intense. That'll just, again, especially when you're on stage, you have to think when you're further away, we have to do things that are a little bit more intense than what we would probably do in just our regular life. And one thing I see a lot of people do wrong when they're highlighting around their eyes is they cover this entire area in makeup. I generally only put it where it's the darkest, and then I let it kind of like blend into the areas that I need it to be lighter and brighter. And so the makeup ends up going where it needs to be, but I don't have so much of it caked on there that it's just going to emphasize any fine lines I might have, because that's one thing, if you put too much makeup, it's just going to emphasize any lines that you could have already. So you don't want it to be too thick or too cakey. And then we're going to go ahead and put on a little bit of, it's a liquid blush, it's like a liquid gel. It is the Cloud Paint by Glossier. So if you're going to use anything that's not a powder, you want to make sure that you are putting that all on before you set your makeup. So for something like this, especially because I'm applying it to my own face, I use the back of my very sanitized hand to apply it. And then a thing like this is going to be really intense when it goes on, and that's okay because this is for stage and we are trying to have a lot of color on the face. So you really want to emphasize like the apples of your cheeks, and then we're going to kind of pull it back into a contour, but we do want to focus a lot of our blush where like when you smile, where you would naturally be blushing, just because children naturally have like rosy cheeks, I think, when we're thinking about them. So I just kind of take it on my fingers and I smile and I kind of pat it where I need it to be. And so it's really intense when it first goes on, but once you set it and kind of blend it with everything, it's really not that intense. And so on my regular makeup, I end up kind of blending it all the way up into my forehead, but for this I'm gonna not do that quite as much, but I like to use this as like a base for my regular blush, just because I feel like it helps it get a stronger kind of color to adhere to from the very beginning. And so I naturally wear a lot of blush in my everyday life, so for me this isn't really too much color. It might seem really intense if you're not used to it, but you do have to think if you're doing makeup for stage, everything you're doing has to be a little bit more intense than what you would probably want to wear in your everyday life. And so this kind of application would work for like a cream blush or a more liquidy blush. This is sort of like I feel like a liquidy cream essentially. And I do like to have some kind of brush to help it blend in, just because it can get a little bit tricky. If you have oilier skin, sometimes this can be hard. Cream and liquid blushes are really, really good if you have dry skin, just because they add in extra moisture. And then I usually go in and I blend it back out with my highlight. And so everything might seem really extreme right now, but I am going to set everything with a powder foundation. So you could just set it with your regular translucent powder. I have a powder foundation that I prefer to set my makeup with. So that always helps to kind of tone things down a little bit. So I'm just going to double check and make sure everything is kind of blended how I need it to be. And then once I'm happy with the blending, we can go ahead and set it. And so, again, I'm not putting any more kind of creams or anything on my face, so then I can go ahead and I can set my makeup and know that it's okay, because everything else I'm applying over it is going to blend, because they're just powders. If you're applying anything else that is a liquid, you want to make sure that you put that on before you set it with the powder, because once you set, you aren't going to be able to kind of undo that or add anything else over it. So you can see, so because I use a powder foundation, you can see that it really tones down that blush. That's why it looks really scary when you apply things like that. And a little bit goes really, really far when you are using like cream and liquid blushes, but it's a good way to just help you get like intense buildable coverage and color. And so, okay. So now that everything is set, we can kind of go in and add in all of the details. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to contour just a tiny bit. It's not going to be anything too intense. It's just going to be enough just to kind of help my face have like a little bit of shading. And I'm just going to really lightly take my lightest contour color that I use in my personal makeup and just really lightly take it over my face. So it's nothing too intense, but that just adds just a little bit of like coverage, and it also just helps in areas like this to blend things into your hairline a little bit more. So my next step for things that I'm going to do is I am going to apply a highlighter to my face. So the highlighter that I like to use when I'm doing things that have to be like photographed or filmed, and I don't want it to be too shiny and glittery because sometimes that can kind of reflect light weird, and it can almost make you look a little bit like sweaty or oily. So if I want to do like an all over kind of brightness, I have this highlighter called Max Mineralized Skin Finish. I really like this because it gives you a glow without giving you like a gloss. So we're going to go in and we'll use things that are a little bit shinier for specific parts, but I like to use this as kind of like an all over kind of brightening. And I use this in my everyday life too. And I like to put it on before I apply my blush, just because that way I feel like it gives kind of like a luminous, like underneath level to my blush. I can't think of a better word. So we are going to apply like a powder blush over this. So you don't necessarily, if you don't have creams, you could do everything with powder. But I always like, if I'm trying to get something that's really going to show up or be more intense, because it does have to be on stage, I like to do things with a combination, just because I feel like that gives a little bit more like sculpt, and that gives you like, if you have that kind of like base layer, it only makes everything else on top of it look a little bit stronger. So I'm going to take just like a pinky blush on like a big fluffy brush, and again I really want to focus it where I smile, and then I can pull it back just a little bit. And so you want to be careful, you don't want it to go too low, and I don't want to get too close to my eye. So for places where I feel like it's gotten a little bit too low, a little bit too close to my nose, because it's almost kind of emphasizing these lines a little bit, I can go back in with like my highlighter or my powder foundation and kind of knock that back out. And then one thing that is kind of popular right now, I think, in makeup, and could work if you're doing like a youth makeup, is a lot of people put just like a little bit of their blush kind of like on the tip of their nose. For your regular theater makeups, that's probably not going to be the best thing in the world, but for a kid's makeup, I think that's kind of like a cute little like addition that you could add to it. That's only going to kind of like add to your character and build your character even more. And so again, I've got that on, and now I want to blend it back out. So I can take my same little highlighter that's not super intense and take it in places where I'm like, okay, I got a little bit too much blush. This will help knock it back down. And if you just do little circles, that's going to help kind of blend everything back into where it should be and back into place. And so to help this be even lighter and brighter, I'm going to just kind of keep moving up in my like highlighter intensity. So I have another one that's a little bit more shimmery than the first one that I used. It's another powder. It's called Pale Tan. It's by Kryolan, but it's still not like super glittery or oily looking. So I'm going to hit the places that the light will really pop when it hits. So that's going to be like the top of your cheekbone and the end of your eye. And again, whatever highlighters you use for your corrective makeup, you can probably kind of repurpose. For this, you're just going to be using them probably a little bit more intensely than what we are used to using. And so again, I really want to make sure I'm highlighting, and like honestly, so like me, I have really oily skin, I have an oil control primer on, and I'm still very oily. So something like that probably won't really be a big deal if you are doing a youth makeup, because kids, usually their skin is just kind of like dewier and glowier anyway. So I wouldn't be super concerned about that, but you still don't want to make any of your highlights so shimmery that it's like too intense to be on stage with. And then I'm going to add another highlighter to it. This one is slightly more intense than the last one I did, and again, I'm just going to go back over those same spots just to kind of, you can see the brighter it gets, just to help build my intensity. And you want to be careful, because sometimes I found the more I highlight here, it actually like emphasizes these lines even more sometimes. So you just kind of want to make it all blend together. But you can see, so if you just concentrate the brush and kind of like move it back and forth, that really helps to like concentrate your brightness. And you can kind of see with how I've done this, I'm definitely looking a lot lighter and brighter on this side than I am on the other. And I usually kind of go back and forth with like my blush and my highlight and everything like that, just to kind of keep everything blended. So don't feel bad if you do have to do something like that. And then the next thing we're going to do is apply a little bit of eyeshadow. So I'm not going to do a ton, but I do want to put on just a little bit, just so that my eyes can be seen from stage. So this is just an eyeshadow primer. Again, this is my own face, so my hands are sanitized. Applying it with my fingers, not a big deal. If this was someone else's face or my hands were not sanitized, you would want to use a brush to apply this. And so I'm not necessarily trying to give myself like a dramatic smoky eye or anything. I just want to put a little bit of color on my eye, so that way my eyes can be seen from stage. So I'm going to use just kind of like a really like neutral shade, and I'm just going to put that on my lid, and this is just going to help to further kind of like brighten my skin. It's a little bit peachier than what my natural eyelid color is, but it just kind of helps just kind of like pop and open them a little bit more, depending on the age that you were playing. Like if you were playing like a teenager in like the early 2000s or like the 80s or something, they might have like more fun makeup, or like glitter or something like that. So this is more just like a general, like if you're playing more of like a child character, not necessarily someone that would be like a teenager or something. So obviously you can add certain things depending on the age that you are playing. But this is just sort of like your general age, youth age makeup, whatever. And so I'm going to come in with one of my highlighters. This is my more intense one, and just kind of go all around my lid. So you want to highlight under the brow bone to help really pop your highlights, and then again hit that inner corner. And then if you highlight the center of your eye, that also helps to brighten the eyes up. Okay. And so it's looking pretty bright. If you feel like you lose your eyes and you do want like a little bit of shading, I recommend taking like either whatever your contour color is, or just like a really, really neutral shade, and just you can really lightly put it in your crease. But I wouldn't do anything that kind of like translates to like a smoky eye or anything like that. So this is just like a very basic, just a little bit of shading just to kind of pop your eye out just a little bit. And again, if you feel like that kind of messes anything up, you can go back and just kind of buff it out. So me personally, I'm not going to put any eyeliner on, just because I feel like when I do eyeliner, it ends up making me look a lot older. So if you're trying to play like a little kid, I would maybe not put on a ton of eyeliner, or you would just put on like a very, very small amount. I'm going to skip it for now, just because I feel like it's a little bit too much if I am trying to play like a younger child. So I am going to do a little bit to my eyebrows, however. So I'm going to try not to shape them as I would like in my everyday life, but most people still need a little bit of color in their brows. So a lot of children do have really light brows, so I wouldn't be super worried about making them maybe as intense as you would if you were playing yourself or like an older adult or something, but just a little bit of color. I wouldn't be too worried about the shape. I wouldn't like pluck them into like a perfect shape or anything like that, but just something, if you're somebody like me that does have a little bit of like a lighter eyebrow, it's just good just to give yourself a little bit of shading in there. And then before we kind of finish this off, I'm going to take one more highlighter, and this one is like the most intense of the ones that I have, so I'm really just going to focus that in the inner corner. So this one is a loose powder, and I feel like sometimes with loose powders, when you really pack them on, you can get a more intense highlight than just a pressed one. But really, if you are trying to like build up a highlight, the most important thing you can do is to just pack it on. So to pack it on, you're just kind of like repeatedly buffing it into your skin. Okay, and so you can see that's really helping to brighten me up. And I am someone who I do have a lot of darkness, you can see in my under eye area, so that is really helping to add all this highlight. I want to be careful that I don't get too greasy looking, but doing all that is certainly helping kind of like build up the highlight a little bit. So I'm going to put on just a little bit of mascara. I do recommend, especially if you're not going to do eyeliner, I would at least put a little bit of mascara on. And I'm going to curl my lashes just because I think that mine are very straight and they don't really show up otherwise. It's not required, but I do think for me personally, that's just kind of like a part of my regular corrective makeup. And if I were going to go on stage, even playing like a younger character, I would still want the basis of what my corrective makeup is, just so that I can be sure that like my makeup is going to be seen on stage. So I'm not going to put on like tons of mascara, but we're going to do just enough so that I can actually have eyelashes, because I think a lot of times little kids actually, I do feel like, have like long curly lashes, so it kind of helps sell the character even more. And then our next thing we're going to do, as I almost dropped this on the floor, so you want to be really careful with mascaras and things like that. You want to make sure that they stay as sanitary as possible, because that's one of those things where you can really get eye infections if you are not careful. So sanitize things, you drop them on the floor, throw them away, don't share your mascara, just be really careful with that kind of stuff. And then another place that we can kind of come in and we really want to help kind of open up and brighten everything is you can do like the inner rim of your eye. So I don't like to do this on other people. I would let someone do this on themselves most likely. You can take either like a creamy highlight color or a white if you really want it to be dramatic, and as long as it's like a soft pencil, you can go right on your inner rim and sort of just help brighten this up. So this is not my favorite thing to do, but it will really help brighten that area up if you need it. So you can kind of see that really kind of popped that part of my eye. Again, be really careful with stuff like this. Make sure it stays sanitary. I just sprayed mine down with alcohol, even though it literally just touched my face, but you want to be as careful as possible with that kind of stuff. And then as far as the lips go, I wouldn't do like, again, depending on the age, but if this was just like a younger kid, I wouldn't do like a bold red lip or something like that. I would just do something more natural, and then I'm even going to add like a little bit of gloss to it. So you just want to make sure, because as we get older, our lips kind of do like lose their color a little bit. So you just want to make sure that you're bringing color back to them. So this is just like a nude pink lip pencil. So again, a lot of the things that you use for your regular corrective makeup, you can definitely use for your youth makeup as well. And then I'm lining it just to help fill it all the way in, but I like to line my lips all the way and then fill them all the way in before I put on any kind of lip color, just because it helps it. I feel like that way, if it wipes off or comes off or something, I still have at least some kind of color on my lips. As far as like a youth makeup goes, I feel like this is a little bit too like dull for that though, so I am going to do something to brighten it. So I've got kind of like a poppier, like clear, not clear, sheer is what I meant to say, kind of lipstick that I'm going to add over it. It just kind of gives me a little bit of color, and then I'm kind of like, oh, that might be, maybe it's a little bit too intense, or I want to make it like a little bit more kind of just like fun. I think a lot of times little girls would wear like lip gloss and shiny things like that. If you're not playing like a super girly little girl or something, a tinted lip balm would probably be great. You just want to do something that is adding just a little bit of color back to you. But I'm going to put on this lip gloss that I have that's got a little bit of a shimmer and like a frost to it, but it's nothing like too intense. But if you are going to do a lip gloss, especially one that's like a little bit more, this one looks really pinky, but it's actually more of like a sheer, I would put some kind of a lip pencil under it, just so that way it reads, because it might not read on stage otherwise. So this one in particular, I've never used on my lips, but a lot of your like liquid and like cream lip stains and cheek stains are kind of like one and the same. So this could also be something that you could use on your cheeks and also on your lips. So as far as the youth makeup goes, you could definitely like call it here and have it be done. I'm going to add in like a couple of freckles. I think doing things like adding freckles and adding acne, again, if it's appropriate, putting like glitter or something like that. But if I'm just doing like a younger age kind of a look like I am right now, probably wouldn't want to necessarily add tons of like heavy makeup or anything. But in order to put on freckles, you could use like a pencil, so I have like a pencil liner. You could use gel liner, liquid liner, face and body paint, cream makeup. If it's anything that has to be set, like a cream makeup, just make sure you go back and set it. But it's really trendy right now to have like fake freckles, so you could just kind of like dot a few on. When you're on stage, you do have to make things a little bit more intense, so if I was doing this for like a photo shoot, I probably wouldn't do them quite this dark. But if you really want to see this kind of stuff from stage, a lot of times you do have to make it, so I do actually have like an actual mole here, a little bit more intense than you would if you were just wearing them, because I know it's really trendy to do this in real life now. So that one is a little bit too intense. But for something like this, you just kind of like press it down and you just move it kind of like in a little circle, and that's going to give you a little bit more of a circular kind of a look. So if you do feel like I made that too intense in some spots, you could just come in with like a little bit of like your foundation or concealer, and just kind of that one, and just knock it down a little bit. Or if you have like a face powder or something, that could also help it, but like honestly, if I was going to be on stage, that's probably not even enough for it to be seen. So that's one of those things, if you are going to do like a little effect like that, or like acne, it might look really weird up close. You might have to do like really prominent dots, and like this is a dark brown. Mine would probably be more like a lighter like red brown in real life, but to be seen on stage and for people to understand what I'm trying to do, it has to be a little bit more intense than what I would probably like. But really quickly and basically, this would be just kind of like a quick little like age makeup if I was trying to look younger. Again, it's going to depend on like your character, exactly how old they are, but you can kind of just see we just sort of made everything a lot brighter than we would if we were just doing our regular makeup. And so you can see from like this side, where I look a little bit more tired, to this side I look a lot more awake. You know, if I had like bows in my hair, like definitely an outfit that wasn't this, I think that would help sell the age makeup a little bit more. But really, the most important takeaway from this, you just want your skin to be bright, emphasize your highlight, emphasize having a good amount of color on your cheeks and your lips, and adding little things like freckles or acne can really help make a big difference and sell your look.